Welcome everybody to the Giver Method channel. My name is Jake and I'm so glad that you're able to join me. Now today we're going to be talking about something that might be one of the biggest productivity killers that gets disguised as like, I'm trying to be excellent, I'm trying to do more, I'm trying to be perfect. And this idea of perfectionism and people who believe that they have to lean into this, everything has to be so perfect. Like, I'm not talking about having standards or just caring about quality. Like, those are important. I'm talking about like the paralyzing need for everything to be flawless before you share it with the world. I've worked with so many individuals, I've worked with so many small business owners that things have to be just so perfect before they're willing to do it. And I've always had the rule that version 1 outperforms version none. And so we're gonna be talking about what that can look like. You know, what's the version 1 that's going to outperform your version none because you keep waiting for everything to be so perfect before you go and do something about it. Now that could look like a couple different ways. Let me paint a picture that might be uncomfortably familiar for some of you. You know, maybe you're a parent who's been like researching the best way, perfect way to handle your teenager's attitude for 3 weeks now, or something along those lines. You read articles, you watch videos, maybe you started even drafting like a family meeting agenda, right? But like you haven't actually just had a conversation yet because like you want to make sure that you say the exact right thing in the exact right way. And all that time's just burning away. Or maybe you're an entrepreneur who's been tweaking the website copy for over a month now. You know, writing those emails and you're just like, no, it has to be just right. We can't get it out yet, right? You know, how many weeks, how many months, how much time has gone by because we're trying to get that perfect thing out the door. You know it needs to go live. You got potential customers who are waiting, but that one headline just doesn't sound right, doesn't feel right, you know? And, you know, the about page could use a little more polish, or maybe, you know, we should add another testimonial somewhere on here. Maybe we should call so-and-so and see what they think. I mean, these are all things I hear all the time. Or maybe you're an employee who spent, I don't know, 8 hours on a presentation that your colleague, you know, maybe would have finished in 2. And like, yeah, it looks amazing, sure, but like, you know, the meeting was yesterday and now your brilliant like insights are just sitting in this folder instead of moving a project forward or having you showcase some of the gifts and skills that you're going to be able to bring to the table. What I've discovered, now I've discovered this through my own struggles, of course, as well as working with others, the patterns that I see working with thousands of other people, is that this idea of perfectionism isn't the pursuit of excellence. Like, that's not what it is. Like, it's fear wearing a disguise for you. You know, it's the part of us that would rather just hide our gifts, our thing, the value we're trying to create forever than risk somebody seeing them as anything less than flawless. And I know some of the most amazing entrepreneurs, thought leaders, you know, people out there that this mask of fear, and they don't see it. They're not willing to call it out. They're not willing to address that elephant that's in the room. And that's what we want to talk about. It's okay to risk it having maybe a flaw if it gets out there and starts performing for you. Now, my name is Jake Talbert. I'm the founder and author of this book. It's called The Giver Method. It came out in November. It is an Amazon bestseller, has tons of 5-star reviews ever since it came out. Thousands of people bought it and just having amazing impacts in their lives. Now, this is grounded in my own story of being in that corporate life and waking up one day feeling like less of a parent, a father, you know, a spouse. Being in, working with entrepreneurs and business owners and individuals, on trying to discover your gifts and superpowers to create more influence and value in the world and have deeper, more meaningful relationships. And this idea of perfectionism gets in the way so many times. So I want to hit on that. At the same time, if you haven't grabbed a copy of the book yet, go down to the description and grab yourself a copy. It's the best $10 you could invest in yourself. Down there below, I'll also put links to some of the other resources we have, as well as the places you can find us on other social media channels. Go check us out, go follow us, subscribe to all the places. But like I said, go get yourself a copy of the Giver Method book. It'll change your life. Now, I've lived this cycle, like we talked about. I lived it myself. These, some of the things are so true to me myself. Like, there's that endless, like, refining of work that, could have already been helping people, but you second guess whether it's, I don't know, I was second guessing my efforts. I met some, I had some impossible standard I created or whatever. But what I've learned is that your gifts that truly can be developed to be superpowers aren't meant to wait for perfect conditions to show through. They're meant to create impact right now, even if they are imperfect. So let's dive through that. Now, before we do, of course, if you're new here, please hit subscribe, ring that bell for notifications. I'd love to make sure that you continue to get the content from us that we release every single week. Every single day of the week, we try to release as much content as possible to create value for you. So please subscribe, hit the bell. comment your thoughts along the way. I'd love to hear what your takeaways are as a part of this. Now, at the same time, if you've got any sort of a podcast or platform, stage, community that needs to hear this sort of a message, well, there'll be a link down below where we can connect, because I would love to talk to you about what that could look like. But the truth is, perfectionism doesn't wait. It doesn't want you to know these things about this. Like, perfectionism doesn't want you to know, like, good enough actions beat that imperfect action every single time. Version 1 will always outperform version none. The most impactful people aren't the ones who never make mistakes. They're the ones who share their gifts constantly, learn from real feedback, and improve through like the iteration rather than isolation. And so let's break this perfectionist spell that you have and get your gifts out there in the world where they belong. So we're going to cover these 6 separate principles as a part of this. So the first one is going to be, recognizing this perfectionist disguise of, once again, this is fear masquerading. It's just right there for you. When perfection pretends to be that excellence, right? Something that might surprise a lot of people is that perfectionism isn't actually, it's not having high standards. That's not what it is. It might feel like it is, but like I said, it's the mask. Like, I just want to do this right. I'm aiming for excellent. I want to be, like, we got to make sure we make a right impression. I've heard these things so many times over the years. But if we're honest, most of the time it is that fear in disguise. There's a Dr. Brain Brown who calls perfectionism a defense mechanism, as a way to protect ourselves from being judged or feeling exposed in any sort of a way. And man, does that hit home? Does it hit home for you? Because it hit home for me. I know it did. Whether you're a parent who's endlessly resorting how to discipline that toddler without ruining your soul, or entrepreneur fine-tuning your offer for the 100,000th time or whatever, before I launch the thing. Perfectionism tricks us into believing that you're being diligent, but what it's really doing is you're just avoiding risk of being seen. And that's gosh, that's just really shrinking what you can go and do and create. The kicker is that we keep refining this cycle. It keeps you stuck. Instead of using real feedback to get better, we rely on your imagination, which usually paints a worst case scenario for you. And you stop sharing, you overthink, you isolate yourself. You're not getting the things out there. And ironically, fear of being not good enough is the very thing that's keeping you from getting better. So here's what you want to do, Here's where you can start. Just a quick gut check like this. There's a perfectionism reality check that you need to do, where you're going to pick a project or a decision that maybe you've been sitting on, something you've been working towards. Ask yourself, am I making this better, or am I afraid to call it done? If you shared it today as is, would it still help somebody? Would it create value? Would it generate revenue? Would it, whatever that looks like? Be brutally honest, because fear doesn't like honesty in any way, but honesty is how you start to take back the momentum. And then next, let's just call it what it is. You got to have fear naming prompt. Anytime you catch yourself stalling for these types of reasons, instead of saying well, it's not quite ready, ask yourself, what am I afraid of people really going to think if I put it out there? Say it out loud, write it down. It could be they'll think I'm unqualified, or they realize I don't have it all together. Whatever it is, name it, because when fear has a name, it loses grip on you. It starts to fade away. And then finally, before you start the next project, try this. Set a good enough target. That version 1. What's the minimum viable product to get this thing out the door? Write it down, share it before you begin. Hey, so we're doing this thing, but we're going to launch the first one here. One of my favorite things to do with business owners is I tell them all the time, hey, let's go make a pitch to something that doesn't exist, and let's go see how many people buy it. And people are well, I don't have anything to give them. I'm cool, we'll figure that out after the fact. They've given you the money, and you've then earned the right to go spend the time to figure it out. Why spin your wheels on something that may not create value or revenue for people, but you're going to spin your wheels on it for days, weeks, months? Let's move past that. You can't fix a problem that you don't name. If you're mislabeling your fear as standards, gosh, you're going to spend years chasing the polished when what you really need is courage. Recognizing the this perfectionist disguise is how you get unstuck, not pushing harder, but by showing up sooner. Because the truth is, your work doesn't need to be flawless to be useful. It just needs to get out there. People need to be able to feel that. Now, our second one is all about this idea of setting that minimal viable, what's the minimal viable product or excellent baseline that I want to do? What's my clear completion criteria before I begin? What's good enough? You have to name it. You know, it's a trap that everyone falls into, especially if you try, if you're someone who cares deeply about the work that you do. And like I said, I know I make a lot of funny voices, and I say that I've worked with a lot of small business owners that this is very true to them. But I get it. I understand that, like, you deeply care about the work you do. You're the people you serve, the impact you're trying to make. And that's as true as parents and employees and any part of your life. You know, the idea is that, like, done is a moving target. It's not there's no perfect way of doing it. You start out with a task, a project, a goal, and the moment you get close to finishing, your brain whispers like, well, maybe just one more thing, maybe just that change, or what if we looked at it this way, and then another, and then another, and then another, and you just keep that ball rolling. Now, the thing you want to think about is, like, you need to decide what's good enough, like what that looks like before you start, not halfway through. When you're already deep in this perfectionist spiral, like, you need to create that minimal viable, like, excellence, like, baseline standard that I'm going to give myself. And no, it's not about setting, like, lower standards or slacking. It's just about deciding in advance what success is going to look like and getting it out there. You know, if you're a parent, you're trying to improve bedtime routine, like you don't need lavender mist in this TED talk about emotional intelligence and the perfect silence and the perfect darkness and all. Like, you probably just need something that gets your kid to go to sleep within 30 minutes that doesn't involve you, like, losing your voice. You know, that's success. You know, entrepreneur, maybe it's the homepage that explains what you do, who it's for, you know, how someone can work with you. It doesn't need, like, the you know, to win any sort of design awards. Like, no one's critiquing it at that level except for yourself. You care more about that than anybody else in the world does. They want the value. You're worried about what the damn page says. Now, before you dive into like, here's how we work on this, fix it. Like I said, before the next project, you're just going to take a few minutes and you're going to say, all right, what's my definition of done? You know, and what if we didn't? I love the question of, like, what if we just didn't? What if we didn't do that? What if we didn't do this? What if we just did this? Oh my gosh, how much easier it'd be, and how much faster that project or that thing or what you're working on gets out there and starts creating more value for people. What would make this genuinely helpful? Who is it for? What are 3 things that you could do that, you know, to include that you feel proud of at the end of it, even if it's not, like, completely flawless? And then you write those answers down and you keep them visible to where you can see them. Like, and when perfectionism starts to kick in and starts whispering that, like, you're not finished yet, you know, they'll come back and say, well, hold on, I got to accomplish what mattered most to me. And then layer it with, like, effort to impact filters. Like, not everything deserves to be the highest gear. So we spin our wheels. I loved it. I was at an event last week, and this guy, Brian Dice, said this amazing thing where he's like, you know, we spend way too much time optimizing things that don't matter. I'm like, oh my gosh, such an amazing idea. Like, you know, not everything deserves to be the highest gear. Think about, like, work in 3 levels. There's, like, level 1, which is, like, big stuff, important things, family decisions, keynote speeches, launches, like, you know, stuff that deserves some polish. There's level 2, like, everyday stuff, like team emails, parenting choices, internal work tasks. You know, hey, those are thoughtful and done. And then there's level 3, which is, like, what are my quick turnarounds, updates, errands, remind, like, just start breaking them down into those sort of levels. These are just some simple examples, but, like, they could fall into all sorts of different categories for you that you can do without burning too much energy to move forward. You know, what's the one move that you can do? Like, try setting a real deadline, like, and not a vague, like, okay, we'll finish this week. Like, no, actual date and time. We're going to finish this Tuesday by 4:30 p.m. Pacific time. Like, even if it's not perfect, if it's not flawless, we're going to be done. We have a rule when we talk to small business owners that all the time where it's like, I tell them, like, you have 6 minutes to write an email and then we're going to send it. If you spend more than 6 minutes, you're trying too hard. How about you write the 6-minute email, send it to somebody, you've now earned the right to go back and refine it. You know, earn the right to go and do the deeper updates, changes, whatever. You have no idea. You could send that 6-minute email and it could produce all sorts of value. You could have that 6-minute phone call with a friend and create so much value and impact in their lives. It's amazing what you can do. Now, this is because, like, perfectionism loves that ambiguity. It thrives where there's no clear boundaries or deadlines, just endless tweaking, changing, trying to get it just right. But when you set the standard ahead of time, you're taking back the power and you're creating structure that respects your time and energy and your capacity even more. You know, it keeps you in this rhythm and out of your head every single time. You know, and then of course there you embrace feedback first methodology. You learn through, like, these real world inputs, you know, and rather than just your internal speculation, share it early and share it imperfect, because most of us are out there, like, We're trying to read people's minds. We're trying to foretell the future. Spend hours, days, sometimes weeks polishing an email, a product, a parenting strategy, a work presentation, that conversation I need to have, whatever that may be, all based on what we think people might want. Most of the time, we're guessing, and we're probably wrong. You know, while we're stuck in that loop, people are trying to, like, the people we're trying to serve are still waiting for the value, you know, the influence, the change that you're able to make in their lives through your gifts and superpowers, your business, you know, the way you serve people, you know. And here's a different way to think about it. Like, stop, like, perfecting, like, let's say, perfection in isolation, like, and start asking yourself, like, for real input out there early and often. You know, go to a feedback first sort of a method idea where it's like, look, I'm not waiting until everything's flawless. I'm just going to share it. I'm going to share it rough. I'm going to share it messy. Guess what? You actually find that you'll have deeper, more meaningful connections with people when you do that. Perfectionism thrives in your head. The more that you get it out there into real life, you start sharing it before you're ready. Stop wasting energy trying to solve these problems. Like, you stop obsessing over the tiny tweaks, and you start getting real feedback that you can start changing things. Like, what if you spend 2 weeks trying to figure out, like, how to make that thing just right for these people or for, you know, your family, and then you go take to them and it falls flat, where it's like, well, if I just tested that, I would have known if I would have tested this first thing if this is going to work or not. You know, so here's your move. Here's what you want to do. Pick something you're working on right now, maybe a business idea or a parenting approach, a slide deck, I don't care, whatever it is. Like, share it with someone who actually, like, represents the audience of who it's for, and then, like, ask them, like, what about this feels confusing, you know, to get to, you know, just as we're getting started, what's useful here? What would you like changed, you know, and you know, what do you think I should really make sure I hit home on? You know, don't fish for praise. Don't ask, like, don't ask, do you like it? Like, just ask for insight, and then try that once again. Like, the emails, it's that 6-minute rule, or if you're working on a project, it's the 48-hour share rule, where within 2 days of starting anything, you're going to find a way to get a version out there to somebody. You're going to share it with someone, even if it's an outline, a verbal explanation, anything. Like, the goal isn't to impress people. It's just get out of your head. It trains our brain to value that real world feedback rather than to imagine what the perfect thing would be. You can be amazed at how it helps you navigate and pivot through those things so much faster. And then, like, what's your feedback loop calendar? Instead of, you know, treating a launch or an idea, you know, like a one-shot moment, or, you know, like, let's plan in some checkpoints. You know, what's, like, at the end of the concept idea, you know, what's, you know, when we get through, like, the rough version of the thing, and then what's the final one right before, you know, go time. You know, you're not carrying the pressure of being perfect all the way through. You're just trying to get it out there in front of people. This shift in the way you think about it, it changes everything, because it dismantles, like, the fear, you know, that's telling you, like, gosh, if you share it, it has to be perfect. I'll be judged. People are going to, you know, what are they going to, it's going to make us look bad. Like, they're actually grateful to be included as part of the process. Like I said, people are more bought in with deeper relationships because of this. You know, feedback, you grow faster, you build better, and you actually show up more consistently to people. That, like, that's a kind of confidence that you can't fake, because it's not based on approval, it's based on actual experience with people. You know, if you want, like, your work to get better, your confidence to grow deeper, your gifts to actually serve people, like, you got to stop guessing and start sharing people, like, real feedback and things that you can do. Now that's going to take us to our fourth principle, which is, like, you have to master the art of strategic timing. You know, using when to stop and when to ship. You know, it's like, when's the time? You know, so you got to practice that a little bit. You know, one of the most underrated confidence skills is out there is knowing when to just be like, hey, I'm stopped, I'm done, I'm going, we're doing this thing. And that's some strategic timing. There's a moment you realize, I don't need to do more polishing. I'm going to get it out there and come back and I'll update it later. Perfectionism is a sneaky way of convincing us that more time equals better results. And the research out there shows that it's completely different than that. The most of the impact in your work comes from the first 80% of your effort. After that, the gains start to shrink extremely fast. You know, we're not improving. We're not, like, we're hiding. We're avoiding criticism. We're not adding value. Like, the whole idea of the giver method is creating value without expecting anything in return. And when you're going for perfectionism, you're expecting that, like, ooh, like, return, like, people to think this way about me. It's like, no, I'm just going to create the value. It drives me crazy that my calendar just went off and dinged when normally I mute my thing when I do videos. Guess what? I'm not going to stop this video and go edit that out or go re-record it, because that's part of the idea. It's like, oh, it happened. I guess I'll mute it right now and we'll move it forward. You know, something that's wild is that some of the best work you're ever going to create is, like, that you feel emotionally, like, it's going to feel emotionally uncomfortable to release sometimes. Not because it's bad, but because you're just so nervous. Like your nervous system is caught up in like with how capable you've become. You know, you might be functionally ready to do whatever you're trying to do, but you feel like the feelings are telling you to keep it hidden. Like, gosh, the strategic timing is going to really move things forward for you. So try building like what's the diminishing return radar for yourself? Like, track how long you spend on each task and how much better the work actually gets with more time. Like, and notice the pattern. If you're doing the first couple things we talked about, you're going to already have some feedback. You're going to be like, man, it really, I feel like I'm making really microscopic tweaks and I'm stressing over the little things. It's like, yeah, you're probably diminishing return for yourself. That's the signal to wrap up and move forward. Next, like practice like a version release strategy where, once again, what's my version 1, 2, 3? How do I, okay, well, that's the concept of the rough draft. Like, use those in every one of these aspects because it's going to have such a massive impact for you in how that shows up. And if you really want to shift things, then use like a calendar where you focus on courage. I'm choosing a date, putting it on a calendar, and when that date hits, I'm shipping it. Whatever it is, I don't care no matter what. I'm sending the blog, business offer, work proposal. Like, the value it holds matters more than the polish that you might be missing. You're just building a muscle of follow through. Like, and the more reps that you get in this naturally, like, you just act before perfection, it's just going to have such a massive impact on you. Perfectionism lies about like payoff. It promises better results if you just wait a little longer. That's so untrue. When you master the art of just sharing before you're fully comfortable, you start building in a way like so much more value than what the polished work would. You build trust in your own rhythm and, once again, deeper connections with the people around you. The fifth one, like as we get rolling through these final ones, like we're going to roll quick, like it's building courage through practice. Developing like this tolerance of imperfect like versions, right? I'm going to be comfortable being seen before I'm ready. Like, the truth is, like, you're never going to say it out loud. Like, something, like, I'm going to share something before it's perfect. Like, well, it's going to feel weird. It's going to feel awkward and maybe even a little scary. But, like, that discomfort, it's not a signal to wait. It's your invitation to grow. Courage isn't something that just shows up when you're ready, like, at whatever point. It's something you build like a muscle. Every time you share something that isn't fully polished, you become a little bit more resilient in your work. So let's be real. There's all sorts of ways that could show up for you as a parent and as an entrepreneur. Like, the idea is of being exposed can feel like a hard pass, but the wild part is that the more you practice showing up before you feel totally ready, the easier it's going to get. And it's not that you're letting your standards down. You're just showing up more real and authentic to the people around you. So what you want to do, like, once again, talk about those on your calendar, the courage that you could be. What's my courage reps I'm going to do? The small moments each day where I'm going to choose to just be visible about my imperfection. Could be chiming in during a meeting with an idea. Maybe it's, hitting send on an email but without having to triple check every word or have AI help you with it. Like, maybe it's choosing parenting approach based on like just what your gut's telling you rather than, the Google searched, researched version of the thing that someone else says you should do. Whatever it is, just log it. Like, log what you're doing so that you can see it happening. Then build your, like, there's a ladder of courage you could have where you're, like, leveling yourself up with maybe some low-stakes stuff to start, or sharing messy ideas with someone super close, and work your way up to sharing, like, works in progress with a colleague. Something that you wouldn't have done because it's not done. And just like, look, I'm just setting a loose timeline of this is what it's going to be and what it's looking like. And then one other game changer is, like, flip how you see feedback. Don't view it as like an attack or anything, and don't think of it that you're trying to find praise. Whether the response is like, this is awesome, or hey, that could be better, like, or complete silence, just celebrate the act that you're sharing, and not the reaction. Write down what you learned, how you felt when you shared it, and like what you could do different next time. Perfectionism has this, a core wound, and it's fear being seen, without everything being seen as polished, and your gifts, the stuff that you're here to give the world, like, they're not going to grow. You're not going to develop. You're not going to be able to make that impact. And so the sixth and final one is you transform perfectionism into momentum. Shifting from perfect products or whatever to continuous progress, like that perfect into progress, is so important. So many of us are stuck waiting for perfect versions of something before we're willing to move. That perfect website, parenting plan, strategy at work, whatever it is. Like, and the real shift, like, what if we just stop obsessing over all of it, right? Let's just stop from the get-go and start focusing on getting something out of what we could, improve upon over time, or how we can make that greater value. It's not about lowering the bar, it's just switching the goal. Like, okay, well, if I'm gonna do that version 1, like I said, then what's 1.1? I'm not worried about 2. I gotta get 1 and 1.1 out. Like, let's work our way slowly through that process. That's how most everything gets built. Your favorite apps, phones, things like it's these little rhythms. You don't see a big change from one iPhone to the next iPhone. But if you have like 2 or 3 generations back, it's like, holy crap, there's a ton of things different. Like, cool, well, we just releasing these things as we go as much as possible. There's all the little updates that happen throughout the year as well. The beautiful part of all this is like when you start moving, you get something perfectionism will never get. You get more energy and clarity. Progress, like each imperfect action gives you data that you can work with. Each rough draft teaches you something. Every attempt builds more confidence in what it is that you're doing. So start with like a 5-minute jump start. When you've got a task, a project, something like, I'm gonna do 5 minutes, that's it. And that moves it forward. Like I said, we do this idea with emails for business owners. Like, what's the 6-minute version? I've got a draft of an outline, record a voice memo, like send a quick check-in, get something in motion. Just get it started. Like, people with stress, like overwhelm and anxiety, like this is one of your best things that you can do is just start with something, just go attack it. And then try that progress plan model. Like, instead of planning one final big thing, once again, if I looked at this like a rollout of like multiple versions, like what would that look like for you? What do you just once? Like, what do you need to get some quick feedback on so you can adjust what it is? How do I keep working towards the vision of what it is I'm trying to create and the value I'm trying to create? And like, well, what polish or improvement could make it more effective later, but I'm going to get it out now where they could create that value for people right away. You can also build a momentum tracker where you just jot down how you felt when you take action and how you felt after. Especially if that action felt imperfect or a little out of your comfort zone, most people discover the same pattern of like this hesitation. It's going to turn into energy. Doubt turns into relief, and like that good enough step turns into a 2, 3, 4, and you just keep moving forward. Perfectionism tells you to wait until you feel confident to act, but momentum shows you that, gosh, you can do it. If you just act now, you're going to keep moving forward. Every time you ship something before it's perfect, right? You build a new type of self-trust that like only comes with experience. And that's how you break this perfectionism loop. You stop being someone who waits for everything to be completely ready, and you start becoming someone who gets better by doing things, by getting real feedback, real growth, real results. Like, you stop chasing this illusion of what perfect is, the perfect business owner, parent, employee, whatever. Like, they don't exist. None of them exist. Most of the times the things that you're seeing are complete facades. If there's one thing I hope really sticks from everything we've covered today, it's like your gifts are waiting on, like, they're not waiting for a perfect moment. They're just waiting for you to see them, to be brave enough to show up and use them before you feel ready, to share what you already have now and your experiences, because you can create so much value for other people by doing that. Every time that you hold back, waiting to make this flawless, perfect thing, like you're waiting for the right words, waiting for just a little polish, like someone misses out on something that you could be giving. It could be a customer, it could be a teammate, it could be your child, like there are all sorts of places that shows up. When you walk through these sort of principles that we talked about, you aren't lowering standards, you're raising your momentum, you're reclaiming your voice, your rhythm, your impact through these imperfect actions. So what I want you to do is pick one thing we talked about today. You've been sitting on, like, find that thing that you've been tweaking endlessly, doubting to death, and just set a good enough baseline, and then share it, post it, say it, launch it, come comment it. I don't care. Let it breathe into the world and like actually help someone, because the truth is, like, perfect might impress a few people, but good enough actually moves them forward, and it will make a much greater impact than you could ever think. Constantly, like, consistently showing up with your real voice, like, beats occasionally showing up with this polished mask every time. Now, if this resonated with you, you want to dive deeper in this idea of, like, discovering your impact. You're creating these gifts and superpowers that you can go out and do more with in your family, in your business, at your office, or whatever that may look like. And once again, I'm going to highly recommend that you go get yourself a copy of The Giver Method. I'll put the link in the description where you can go get it. It says it's the best money you could invest in yourself this year. Hey, if you have a community, you're on a podcast, you have a stage where this message needs to be heard, then hit the link in the description and let's connect so that we can talk about how that could work out for you. Here's the real thing. Once again, your good enough is more than enough for someone out there right now. It could be the exact thing they're waiting for, and the only question is, will you keep hiding it, or will you just trust that you have enough to share? You don't need to be flawless. You don't need to be, you just need to be in motion, right? Stop trying to be so polished. Start sharing. The world is waiting for your gifts and superpowers. So go give them generously. Stop trying to make everything so perfect. That's not what we need. We need you to be real. I hope that you enjoyed this. Hopefully you took some stuff away from it. I'm excited to see where this goes for you. So with that, I'll just say have a great rest of your day. We'll catch you in our next video.